What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. This video is the ninth wonder of the world, the Chyna story, full career documentary. This was suggested by a handful of people. It's been a minute since I reacted, so hello everybody. But yeah, I don't want to waste any more time. Let's get into it.
In the late 90s, the WWF's women's division wasn't focused as much on wrestling
But I hope you guys are good.
as it is today. And although there was a handful of legitimate in-ring performers, none of them got over with the crowd quite like Chyna. Yes, from her time spent as a bodyguard to Triple H to being one of the founding members of D-Generation X, all the way to becoming the only woman to ever hold the Intercontinental title and beyond, the ninth wonder of the world remains one of the all-time greats to this day. But how did it all happen? Well, join us today as we take a deep dive into her entire career journey in Ninth Wonder of the World, The Chyna Story. Joan Marie Laurer was born on December 27, 1969 in Rochester, New York, to a relatively normal middle-class family that she shared with her two older siblings, Kathy and Sonny. This normality, though, would be shook up when she was still just 4 years old, as it was then that her parents would get divorced. And things would continue to be tough for Joni, as she would have a very traumatic childhood, which led to her developing an eating disorder around the time she turned 13, something which led her mother believing she had a drug issue as she tried to force her to enter a rehab facility. But obviously unwilling to do this, Joni would leave home instead, so as to go live with her father, moving around the world with him to places as far and wide as Spain, where she would complete her final year of high school. Still, her problems wouldn't be over then, because during this period, she would have a health scare when she developed an ovarian tumor, something she didn't initially feel the pain of due to the fact that her abdominal muscles had become so strong on account of her working out so much. Yes, in an attempt to get over her eating disorder, the New York girl had taken to bodybuilding, and this appeared to work for her so much that, once she'd successfully gotten her tumor removed soon thereafter, she'd continue to pack on muscle in the hopes that she would eventually be able to take up a career in law enforcement, namely the FBI.
Got ripped.
Ultimately, this wouldn't happen, however, as, while majoring in Spanish literature at the University of Tampa in 1992, she would join the Reserve Officers Training Corps instead, with this eventually leading to her joining the Peace Corps upon graduation. And while joining the Peace Corps, Joni would spend some time over in Guatemala, there helping to bring humanitarian aid to the local people. Once she was back home, though, she would find herself going through a number of different jobs as she tried to make ends meet. Jobs which included working as a cocktail waitress in a strip club, singing in a local band, belly dancing, and selling pagers. At one point, she would even train to become a flight attendant, with this ending up coming to nothing when, while driving to her first flight, she would get into a car accident and would have to spend the next 4 days in the hospital as a result.
Jeez.
Yes, it seemed like the future WWE superstar just couldn't catch a break. Luckily, though, she at least had
See, I did say that I like understanding people's backstory before they join the WWE. So.
bodybuilding to fall back on, as, during the
Bodybuilder, bartender, she did some aid work in
mid-90s,
Guatemala.
she would enter into a number of fitness competitions, even competing in the New York City regionals of Fitness America in 1996.
There's something in
But
my
despite her
eyes.
impressive physique, it seems like her sheer size would often work against her in these competitions during this, as, apparently preferring more petite women, the judges would often vote her into last place. That said, this size would be appreciated in another industry, as in 1995, Joni had begun training in professional wrestling after signing up to Killer Kowalski's school in Malden, Massachusetts. Yes, the world of wrestling was something she'd been a fan of for a long time by that point, but with her not fitting the bill of what most women looked like in the ring then, she'd never seen it as a viable career path. Obviously, something happened to change her opinion on this, however, as, by later on in 1995, she'd have her first match, working under the name of Joni Lee and taking on a male wrestler who was dressed as a woman. That's right, it seemed that even this early on, promoters realized that she should be taking on the men instead of the women on account of her sheer strength and size. and this impressive introduction would soon see her fall under the attention of Triple H and Shawn Michaels, who would meet the rookie at a local wrestling school in late 1996. That then would turn out to be just the break she was looking for, as, immediately understanding how big of a star she could potentially be, the two Clique members would go to Vince McMahon and ask him to bring her in as a bodyguard for the game going forward, with them arguing that not only would it be believable that she could beat up his opponents, but the fact that he was bringing in a woman as his muscle would draw major heel heat for the mid-90s audience. And while initially the boss didn't like the idea, he would have a change of heart when, upon hearing that Joni had been offered a contract with World Championship Wrestling to act as the newest member of the NWO, he would quickly jump to sign her up, with her debuting soon thereafter at February 16, 1997's In Your House 13 Final Four. That's right, at Final Four, Joni, or Chyna as she would from then on be known, made a quick impact by emerging from her seat at ringside to choke out Marlena during Triple H's match against Goldust, helping him to get the win in the process. After that, she would be announced as the Enforcer of the game, a role which would later see her evolve into the Enforcer of D-Generation X as a whole when that group formed later on in the year. And often, this would involve her helping her stablemates to pick up wins by interfering in their matches, usually laying out their opponent on the night with a well-placed low blow.
Dang.
But underhanded tactics or not, it was clear to everyone that Chyna was a woman not to be messed with, and someone who could indeed very believably stand toe-to-toe with most of the men on the roster. That, though, didn't stop many of the male performers from being hesitant to work with her at first, as many of them worried that being beaten up by a woman on TV would hurt the believability of their characters. Those that were smart enough to see past this, however, quickly realized that this was a trivial issue, and
Do y'all see the size of her? I think it would be
that
believable.
by sharing the ring with both her and the rest of DX, the money would soon come pouring in. And these appearances would usually end with them getting thoroughly laid to waste by the New Yorker, who had by then become such a dominating force that she had picked up the moniker of the Ninth Wonder of the World, with this both selling her once-in-a-generation abilities while also providing a nice nod to the Eighth Wonder of the World, Andre the Giant. And during this period, she would become so popular with fans, both male and female, that the company would eventually start to give her storylines of her own, one of the most notable of which saw her start a romantic relationship with Mark Henry in August of 1998 as, believing himself to be irresistible to women everywhere, Sexual Chocolate made it his aim to conquer her. And of course,
Please don't tell me that was his nickname. Sexual Chocolate. Okay.
initially, Chyna would have none of this,
I hope that
instead
wasn't.
choosing to spurn Henry's advances. That would change come late 1998 though, when she began acting as his on-screen girlfriend for a time, allying herself with him and coming out at his side during matches, all up until the point that she would later reveal that the whole thing had been a ruse as she gave Henry a beatdown and sent him packing for his unwanted advances all those months prior. But even if she was now single on-screen, off-screen, Joni's love life would fare much better as, by then, she'd entered into a serious relationship with Triple H, one that would see the two become inseparable for a time. And while this was continuing to blossom, back in the ring, she'd make even more history when, after winning the Corporate Battle Royal on the January 11th, 1999 episode of Raw, Chyna would become the first woman to ever enter the Royal Rumble itself, coming in there at number 30 and even getting to eliminate her old foe Mark Henry before being dumped out herself by Stone Cold Steve Austin. And despite achieving such a big milestone that night, in Chyna's mind, she'd ultimately failed to win the big match. That was why, the next night on Raw, she'd reassess her career path when
I'm sorry, guys. Literally something in my eyes. Jeez.
she turned heel on DX, from there joining up with the corporation and even teaming up with Kane to take on Triple H and X-Pac at February 14th's St. Valentine's Day Massacre. But if anyone thought this was going to cause issues with her and the game's relationship, they were very wrong as, a couple of months later at WrestleMania 15, he would join her by turning heel himself as the two went on to once again become a power couple of the villain's side of the company. By then though, even though WWE were trying to position Triple H as their next top singles star, it was arguably Chyna who was the more popular of the two, and possibly even the bigger draw. And this would be apparent in the fact that June, she would become the first woman to qualify for the King of the Ring tournament, there making it all the way to the quarterfinals before she was beaten by her old DX stablemate, Road Dogg. After that, success would continue to come her way when, in the lead-up to August 22nd's SummerSlam, she would briefly become the #1 contender to the WWE title, with the plan at this time allegedly having been to see her face off against Steve Austin at the big show and possibly even beat him. Ultimately, though, this plan was changed as many behind the scenes felt that making her WWE champion would have been a step too far. And whether you believe this is true or not, it's inarguable that by this point, having become such a big star that she was even in the conversation for such an honor, the ninth wonder of the world had been able to shatter the glass ceiling in a way that no woman before her ever had. That was one of the reasons why, while she wouldn't end up winning the WWE title, Vince McMahon and his head writer at the time, Vince Russo, would still see her as championship material. But with her being so far beyond the rest of the women on the roster at this point, it was clear that winning the women's title would be a step down for Chyna. So meeting somewhere in the middle then, the company chose to break even more ground when, after turning her
do you see the size of her arms?
Babyface and distancing her from Triple H on screen later that autumn, she would be booked to begin challenging for the Intercontinental title, a belt that had, up until that point, been a men's-only one. Obviously, Chyna didn't care about this history though, however, but that wouldn't be the end of the story as it happened because, with Jarrett at this point playing a misogynistic heel character on screen, the ninth wonder of the world made it her mission to be the one to finally dethrone him, something she was eventually able to do the following month at No Mercy. One to finally heel character on screen, the ninth wonder of the world made it her mission to be the one to finally dethrone him, something she was eventually able to do the following month at No Mercy when, in a Good Housekeeping match, she pinned Double J to become the first, and to date only, woman to ever hold the secondary strap. And after that then, she would pick up a new valet in the form of Miss Kitty, as from there, she defended against all comers in the weeks that followed. And the biggest of these challenges would end up coming from Chris Jericho, someone who would take on the new champion at November 14th Survivor Series, falling to her in the end. Things would fare far differently in the rematch though, as at December 12th's Armageddon, Y2J would be able to get the better of his opponent, this time beating her by submission to take home the belt for himself. So, with the series now at a win apiece.
So you guys did say that when a clip is blurred, that means it's copyrighted.
A rubber match was needed to settle things once and for all. And this would come on the December 28th episode of SmackDown where, in a controversial finish, both competitors ended up pinning each other at the same time, with this leading to them being declared.
How?
Both competitors come on the December 28th episode of SmackDown where, in a controversial finish, both competitors ended up pinning each other at the same time, with this leading to them being declared co-champions going forward, forcing them to learn to coexist. This then carried on until the January 23, 2000 Royal Rumble, when a triple threat match saw both champs having to defend against Hardcore Holly, with Jericho getting the winning pinfall here, allowing him to claim the belt for his own once more. And as if the loss of her title wasn't bad enough, somewhere around this time, there would also be a pretty big backstage controversy when Joni discovered that her boyfriend Triple H had been secretly seeing Stephanie McMahon, someone who he'd been engaged in an on-screen program with for a few months prior to this. So obviously devastated by this, the New Yorker would sink into a deep depression that saw her struggle to move on in the months that followed, something which was made even more difficult by the fact that whenever she came into work from there on in, she would be forced to see her now former lover canoodling with the boss's daughter. But, still needing to perform, she tried her best to put this to the side as, on screen, she would find a new partner in the form of Eddie Guerrero, someone who had been seeking her affections for some time by that point, hoping to make her his mamacita. And while initially Chyna would become hesitant to reciprocate these advances, eventually she would come to love Latino heat, as in the spring of 2000, they would formally join forces, becoming a power couple of the mid-card and firm fan favorites in the process. So powerful did they become, in fact, by that August SummerSlam, the two would face off against Trish Stratus and Val Venus in an intergender tag match where Val's Intercontinental title was on the line. And this led to the ninth wonder of the world winning the belt for a second time, only for her to then lose it again 2 weeks later when that dastardly Eddie wrestled it away from her in a triple threat match that also involved Kurt Angle. And this would put a strain on the relationship going forward as it happened, a strain which eventually led to a full-blown breakup when, later that year, Chyna would catch her man cheating on him with 2 other women, leading to the two splitting for good. But by this point, she had her own things going on anyway, as that November, she would become the latest WWE diva to appear as a cover girl in Playboy magazine, something which then led to the right to censor getting in her face in the weeks that followed, as they believed that what she was doing was immoral. And this would ultimately lead to the January 21st Royal Rumble, where the New Yorker would face off against the group's lone female member Ivory in a match for the WWE Women's title. Despite being the clear favorite on that night though, Chyna would end up losing the match after appearing to injure her neck during a handspring back elbow, something which allowed her opponent to pick up a quick pinfall. And to sell the severity of the whole thing, which was in reality a worked injury, Jerry Lawler would even leave the commentary booth to go check on the downed challenger after the match, something he hadn't done since the death of Owen Hart 2 years prior, leaving many to deem the angle as tasteless. But tasteless or not, the company would continue on with it, as in the weeks that followed, they would tease that the ninth wonder of the world was going to have to retire due to how badly she'd been hurt. Of course, in the end, she would make a recovery just in time
Did she actually hurt her neck?
to face off against Ivory one more time at WrestleMania 17, where, in a quick squash match,
Or was
she
that
pinned
because I know sometimes that wrestling, like WWE, I don't know how to say it, kind of like fakes injuries, because a wrestler or a performer might have something personal going on in their life, so they might change like the story up a little bit to, oh yeah, this person gets injured, so they have to leave for a little bit,
champ to take home the
when in reality they're just dealing with personal
women's title for
stuff.
herself for the first time. And while this would have been an honor for any other female on the roster, for Chyna, it felt like a step down given how much she'd already achieved. And this would be a feeling that was shared amongst many fans at the time who believed that, as a result of Triple H and Stephanie's relationship, the once dominant star was now being phased down the card, far away from the main event scene. Was this true? It's not fully clear, but the timing of it certainly suggests that there's smoke to the fire. Either way, unhappy with her new spot on the roster, the New York girl would defend her women's title for the next few months, up until the time that her contract ran out in May of that year that was, and in return for signing a new one then, she would demand higher pay, allegedly comparable to that of Steve Austin and The Rock. Now, you can argue that she wasn't as valuable as those two particular stars, but it was undeniable that Chyna remained one of the biggest names in the company at that time anyway, and so surely deserved a pay increase for all the good work she was doing. Given who was running things though, and any personal vendettas they may or may not have had against her, WWE did not place her value this highly, and so negotiations would quickly break down following this, with her leaving the company soon after. And this would be the last time she would ever appear in WWE as it happened, because, from there, her life would begin to spiral out of control as she sank into a pit of despair and drug abuse, something which appears to have been worsened by the fact that she was still struggling to get over the split from Triple H. But that didn't stop her from trying to wrestle through her pain as, in 2002, she would have a brief stint with New Japan Pro Wrestling, there having a number of matches, the most notable of which was probably her singles bout with Masahiro Chono, where she got to show that she could still hang in the ring with the boys. After this, however, she would disappear from the wrestling industry for some time, instead finding herself making the odd TV appearance on shows like Third Rock from the Sun and Celebrity Deathmatch, all while even finding time to do a second shoot for Playboy. And this second shoot would eventually open the doors for her doing more work in the adult entertainment industry as, in 2004, she started appearing in adult films, with her making several of these over the next few years. And by then, she'd also
Chyna, why? You have so much potential.
entered into a
You didn't need the WWE. You are a good wrestler.
tumultuous real-life relationship with her former stablemate X-Pac, one which saw a continued pattern of breakups and reunions between the two, with her at one point even being accused of domestic abuse against him. Yes, things were really getting out of control for the former WWE superstar, something which was evident in her increasingly erratic public appearances on shows like The Howard Stern Show, Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew, or Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. So trying to find help from the spiritual world then, she'd become a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints while living in Japan between 2012 and 2015, with this seeming to give her some peace as, around this point, she'd begun filming a documentary about her life and her road to recovery. Unfortunately though, any happiness she felt would be short-lived, as on April 20th, 2016, she'd be found dead at her home in Redondo Beach, California, at just 46 years old, her tragic passing coming as a result of what looked to be an accidental overdose. And following her death, her friends within the wrestling industry would begin to pour out tributes for the woman who had broken so much ground and had gone forgotten for so many years up until then. Yes,
The unfortunate thing about drugs is when you start doing them and you have a lot of problems, it's hard to stop.
WWE had largely whitewashed her from their history sometime prior to this, with the official reasoning given by Triple H being that her career in the adult entertainment industry prohibited any other course of action. Thankfully though, this would eventually turn around, as in early 2019, Chyna would be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame as part of D-Generation X, with both Triple H and Shawn Michaels supporting the idea of a future solo induction for her at a later date too. When will this happen? Well, that remains to be seen, but it's nice to know that, finally, after all these years, WWE is acknowledging Joni again, as, when it comes to female stars, there are few who deserve to be praised as much as her for everything she did in breaking down barriers, and proving that, for all the young girls watching at the time, in an era where most women were expected to do nothing more than look pretty, they could be ass kickers too, if given the chance. Well, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, her life was like her early life. Yeah, she was doing a lot. She was doing, volunteer aid in Guatemala. Bro, I have such a garbage memory that I don't even. She got into bodybuilding. What else? I forgot what else she did, but yeah, her early life, yeah, you could see a lot of passion, and then as the turn of the century, things just started going downhill, and that's the most unfortunate thing. I like her story is, yeah, very sad that happened. Rest in peace to Chyna. If you guys did enjoy this video, please give it a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.